Producer dude, here we go again, another podcast. Are you sick of this yet?
No, these are easy. I don't have to leave home for this kind.
Oh, nice. And I don't have to see you.
Exactly.
It's kind of nice. So here's what we do. I've got Craig Lewis lined up. Some people know him. He owns Erie Outfitters. Been in the tackle business for a long time. I don't even know how he got into it, so that'll be an interesting thing. And I've known him for a very long time, probably pushing 20 years. Any rate, he is one of the guys that co-founded the Fall Brawl. Now, you know about the Fall Brawl.
I do. My cousin would skip family functions and anger my uncle and aunt and just be gone for these family functions because of Fall Brawl.
Yeah, well, it's even worse now because what we're going to talk about, there was a little bit of a falling out or what have you, but long and the short of it is Craig has started a new deal, and it's called the Walleye Salm. So the long and short of it, now basically guys are fishing for multiple boats. So it's almost like a double down. So I'm pretty sure your family events are going to get smaller is what I'm getting at. So I'm sure you'll have some things and make sure to keep us on track. But let's bring Craig in because he's a busy guy. He runs a little tackle shop there, like I said, and it's very difficult to get him to sneak away. So I feel fortunate that he's going to give us some time. Craig, thanks for joining us.
Morning. How you doing today?
We're doing good. We had a late night of fishing. We were trying to dodge systems there yesterday and had a group that couldn't get in till later, and we had a couple hours and fortunately made it happen. But
that's a good thing with the fishing right now. All you need is a few hours.
Some days that's definitely the case. That early and late bite, even last night, not to digress too much, but it was like just before dark, it was way better. I mean, it's kind of like that morning bite, and before then there was junk fish and stuff mixed in, and then it went all just crazy. I mean, we had 4 boards out and 4 fish on a couple times, and pandemonium for the boys. But
it's a good problem.
Fishing is what we're going to talk about, but we're going to go probably a different direction. Some people, I've known you a long time. I've known you as a tackle shop owner. People have known you as we'll call it fall derby guy, and maybe that's part of what we're going to talk about here. So, but before we get into all that other stuff and the craziness of the fishing business, I want to know how you got into the tackles business, because while I've known you a long time, I honestly don't know that myself.
Well, it's actually a goofy road. When I was young, I started tying flies and tying jigs, and one day had the idea to see if I could sell them to some tackle stores. And so about 30 years ago, I started a little company, and we manufactured steelhead flies and micro jigs, and they took off. And before you knew it, I had yarn drying on every lampshade, jig heads in my ovens, feathers hanging everywhere, and I knew it was time to either do something bigger with it or close it up. So the concept came, let's turn it into a shop. So turned it into a shop, and here I'm still doing it. It's either I think I'm just too stupid to quit.
Well, I always say if you're smart enough to do what we do, you shouldn't be so dumb to do it.
But still here at it today. So it's been a fun ride. I started with a real little shop, and literally probably 24 stinger spoons, a half a dozen crankbaits. And when I sold those, I bought 3 dozen spoons and 24 crankbaits, and then 6 dozen spoons and 30 crankbaits. And shortly after, added rods and reels, and here we are. So it's been a long ride, but it's been a lot of fun. Made some great friends, and I got to experience a lot of things I wouldn't have got to experience not owning a shop.
So tell me, I mean, for a guy that's been there doing this long enough, there's a lot of guys, in the fishing business or really any industry, and they've been doing something and they think like they're almost pioneers, right? And they haven't even been through a generation. So you've been through the pre-internet era. So when you wanted something, right? I mean, I can remember even as a kid, there was only a couple, like box stores of Company A, and now, it seems like they're on every corner. There's just a lot more options to get tackle. So how has that really changed for you? Because when you've got internet stuff, you got box stores on every corner. I'm going to call you a mom and pop, pro shop. Like, that's changed, right?
Well, it's changed a lot over the years. I mean, the internet's added good and bad things. It's easy to get out there and show people what you have now. as well as information. And I think that's really what's made us different is, you can buy a Dipsy anywhere, but how you put it on your rod, as simple as it may seem to some people, if you've never done it, it's important, and they need to see how. And they come to a shop like ours, as well as many others, because we're hands-on. It's not just, here's our stuff, buy it. They get to come in, they get to learn a little bit, take that knowledge, go out and catch a couple fish, and ultimately that brings them back to our store as well. I mean, we have relationships with our customers. I'm 3 generations in with some families. Grandpa came in to get worms. Dad came in because he wanted to troll. Now Junior comes in because he ultimately wants to fish head-to-head or FLW or the local LEWT, or just go hang out on the piers. So, it's a little bit different of a situation than walking into a box store or ordering something online. Everybody has their place, and that's where mom and pop stores became. It's the place to go to actually see how to do something, not just buy an item.
Yeah, and it does occur, but realistically, live bait isn't a great deal. I know we're using less and less of it, but I mean, I still like using night crawlers and, in minnows at certain times of the year, especially at springtime. And, that doesn't work too well with other avenues of getting tackle.
Yeah, you're not going online and ordering a dozen minnows. So.
No, I know it's kind of in a different way. I worked with a company, Fish USA, and they've kind of specialized in, carrying all this stuff, but, getting custom colors and things too, and trying not to be that typical box store. And, in a different way, that's what you do.
Well, and that's the other thing. We deal with a lot of small local companies, or not just local, but small companies from Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, certain specialty items that you're not going to see in those box stores. And sometimes as well, you're not going to see them online because, Dan pulls up a pickup truck and you buy what you want from him, and he's off onto the races. You're never going to see those specialty items in any of those other places. And that's really unique about, mom and pop shops too. When I go on trips, I stop at other mom and pop shops because they're ultimately going to have things that I don't have, because they deal with different people in their neighborhood or their circle to buy certain products that, aren't even available to me. So it's, I love going to other bait stores, and a lot of people find that strange, and a lot of even other shop owners look shocked when I walk in and buy a couple of items, because it's just something I don't have in my store. And I'm a fisherman too. So just like you, I like to collect things that sometimes don't even make it in the water, but they seemed really cool when I was standing in front of it.
Well, I know Scott Stecker, he always says that you got to catch 2 things, and the first one has a wallet. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But it's been, so many things have changed. I mean, we've seen the fishery change, limits change, even the types of baits that we use. I mean, I remember when custom walleye blades, first of all, they were hard to find. Nobody made them. We had them on our store. I think the first year we put up custom walleye blades, well, Chip, as you know, from Silver Streak, he thought I was nuts because we sold, I don't know, like 100 of them. Seemed like a big waste of time. 3 years later, he's painting 18 hours a day, and we can't keep them on the shelf. And we offer 172 colors. And, since then we've moved into the crankbait era. And we've seen the biggest comeback of a bait that I've ever seen is spoons. For years, I mean, they were the mainstay. They disappeared for a while, and now we're right back to spoons. So we've seen things come and go over time, and the innovations in the fishing business, the quality of the baits, the availability of colors. That's exciting for us too, as shop owners, not only for our customers, because like I said, most of us are fishermen, so we enjoy it as much as the customer does.
The thing that surprised me as a kid, using the small spoons, what are they, roughly 2 inches, whatever, like a Silver Streak Junior. And now I'm using actually a lot of times the bigger one, the mini, whether it's to keep junk fish off a little bit, or junk fish being 9 to 12 inch walleyes or 13-inch walleyes,
yeah.
Kind of too. But that's when I was a young and we were pulling spoons. If you put a bigger size spoon on, your catch rate was 0. And I don't know if that's got to do with, we had a lot more emerald shiners then. That forage base was smaller, because it wasn't even a small fish thing. Like we had pretty good, average size fish. But I don't know if you kind of experienced the same thing when you went from like this to that. it was the difference between catching a bunch and very little.
Well, it's funny how that happens too, because we've seen it go back and forth over the years. I mean, 3 years ago, we sold way more small ones than we sold big ones. This year, it's all big. I mean, it's 50-1. And what's even crazier about it, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, would it be 50-1? I would have said, no, the small one's the way to go. I'm sure it'll cycle through again at some point when the bait or forage changes, like you said. And we've seen that phenomenon with crankbaits too. I mean, this year, more people are requesting small crankbaits than I've ever seen before. As you know, the flicker phenomenon that happened this year, the boogie shad, all types of small baits are coming back into play, which is weird because we're all running big spoons, but we're running small crankbaits. So sometimes I guess it's just what the fish want, or it's what the anglers are comfortable running. And you know as well as I do, if everybody ran small spoons, everything would be caught on small spoons. So a lot of times I wonder if it's us or if it's the fish. Either way, when I'm on the water, I'm duplicating what you guys do because, I've watched and found out, hey, that works. I'm going to do it. So I don't have time to recreate the wheel.
I've told a story a million times when I used to mate I still was in high school for a guy, and the guy said, all we could catch him on was gold nuggets. It's going back quite a ways. And you look in the rocket launcher, and these guys that are casting, of course, anybody that maybe isn't from around this area, and they got 14, 15 rods or whatever in the rocket launcher, and every one of them was a gold nugget. And I'm like, hey, did you guys throw anything else? You can only catch them with what you put in the water, right? But the fisher really has changed. The chrome crankbaits. I'm sure you're probably the best guy to ask, because people can lie to me or on a forum or something, or say they did one thing, but sales are sales. So, I mean, the chrome stuff. I don't care what brand you're using, or foil finishes like on the Bagleys. I got some of those that I like. That has made a big difference.
Oh, it's funny we talk about how things recycle. When I started casting for night walleye off the shore when I was a young man, if you could find a blue chrome husky jerk, you had like the magic lure. Here we are again. It doesn't matter what brand you buy. Blue chrome is the number one seller. Things just come back. They go away. They come back. It's funny you say gold nuggets. When I ordered them 2 years ago, I said, I can't believe I'm putting these back on my shelf. Here they are, still on the shelf today, still selling and still catching walleyes. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, guys have reverted back. To talk about the husky jerk, a funny kind of story. I was in high school, and I used to travel with Gary Roach, the Mr. Walleye, and he was with Rapala back then, and they had literally, it was like a mini little briefcase, and they had numbers on all these things, and it's now what we know is the husky jerk. And let's just say I swiped a few of those. This is, I don't know, 90 something. And I was like, I'll get them back to you. And I almost felt like I was cheating. Like I was trolling. They were I think HJ12s and 14s, the shallow ones, at night out there. And then, of course, like you say, casting from shore a little bit later on. And I'm not going to say I was the first guy to have them on Lake Erie, but I think I was pretty darn close because, I had one of 5 different colors, and that was it. And man, I was just like, oh my gosh, this thing's going to catch them. And I don't do as well on them as I used to for whatever reason, but there was a long period of time where that was the deal.
Yeah, it's even guys, as you know, there's a bandit phenomenon. Most guys you talk to, they're like, oh, that new bait. And they don't realize that bandit's been around for 20 years. One of my best, and I remember this distinctively in 1989, my best single night bait was a rippling redfin in black and chrome. They probably vanished. Nobody asked for them. And here we are, 15 years, 20 years later, actually a little longer than that if you do the math. They're back and everybody's running them behind dipsies. So even what guys consider new baits are really old baits.
How do you see these things changing for your shop? I mean, to keep up with things, with the internet and all that good stuff.
Well, really, right now, I think not only the mom and pop stores, your corner stores, your online stores, everybody has to change. We don't have a choice with what's going on. You and I touched briefly on it yesterday. Guys walk into stores. It doesn't matter if it's mine, if it's a box store, if it's somebody else's, and they can't find a #1 black dipsy, and they don't realize that they're just not available. This COVID thing, the shipping thing, the employee thing, everybody's got a different thing to overcome. The spoon and blade guys, like we talked about, they used to be able, and even rod holder companies, they used to be able to send their stuff out, and 7 to 10 days, they'd all have it back. It would be ready to paint or ready to assemble. Now some of them are 18 weeks out, 22 weeks out. You really have to plan ahead. We used to be able to run our store basically once a week, get on the phone, place all our orders, everything comes in. Next week, we sell everything, we get on the phone. Now we're planning, companies are asking us to plan our orders for next year and the year after right now with what COVID's done to these companies. They can't tell us when we're going to have rods, when we're going to have reels, when we're going to have dipsies. It's had to change for everybody. And quite honestly, I see it getting worse before it gets better. Companies are getting further and further behind. It's not their fault. It's just like your tackle store owner, when you go in there and you want something, he doesn't have it. We'd all love to have fully stocked shelves with everything everybody needs. But right now, that's almost impossible. Even as we touched base on yesterday with your online stores, you go in and there's certain things that are just out of stock, out of stock, out of stock, out of stock, and there's no timeline on when they're going to be back. So right now, I think a lot of bait stores like my own, I don't want to call it survival mode because I don't think we're at that level yet, but I will say things have had to change for all of us. And it's changed really quick. This spring started out the most different kind of year I've ever had. You no longer call and get what you ask for. You call and you get what's available. And a lot of us have added stuff to our stores just to fill shelf space, stuff that we've never sold before. A lot of them are working out really well, and a lot of them are filling space on the wall. So I think it's a little different for everybody right now. And with all the shops you frequent and the stores you're associated with, I'm sure you're seeing that as well.
Well, we could talk about tackle stuff all day, but the elephant in the room that if I didn't bring it up, people would be like, what are you doing? Is talking about, the fall derby stuff. And specifically anybody that doesn't know, maybe people know you from that and not the tackle side of the world, but, the Fall Brawl, you were one of the co-founders of that about, 10 years ago-ish, something like that?
It's actually been like 13. It actually started before with Fish Crazy and Spring Fling, and it's evolved over time, but I've been the way station for them for like 13 years now. To just cut to the chase, this past year, the Fall Brawl decided or made a business decision that it wanted to increase its value. And they thought by going to a box store, which is Cabela's, that would do it. And so I got left out. At the time, like anybody else, it was crushing. I really was hesitant about doing anything else. And, other opportunities had walked through the door, and I really weighed them all. And, I said, ultimately, I got to make a decision here. Am I going to sit in the background? Am I going to watch? Or am I going to do something? The right pieces came together. There were certain requirements that had to go along with this that made me willing to do it. It's a ton of work. It's a ton of work for the Brawl, and now the Walleye Slam. It's a ton of work. There's a lot of time that goes into it. And I said it really has to be good for the shop. It has to be good for the angler. And just my personal attitude and the way I treat things is that in 5 years, could I have the biggest derby, the biggest walleye competition in the country? And I said, I can do this. So the pieces came together and we started the Walleye Slam. The Brawl now is with Cabela's. The Slam runs out of my store. We have Erie Marine Sales, National Fishing Expos. Hook and Drag is on board. And I think we've really created something special here. And I really believe in 5 years we'll have the biggest derby in not only the Great Lakes, but in the country for walleye. So pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that was kind of a crushing deal, and sometimes it's not what you say, but how you say it, or the timing of things and what have you. But realistically, I think you probably take those, 12, 13 years or whatever that was, experience, and I've already seen a few little changes in there. There's probably most people wouldn't even recognize it, but I think it makes it more angler friendly. I can just tell you why a lot of people I know, they're weighing in fish super early in the morning, super late at night. That's a big deal, and I can't even imagine there's not much sleep for you in that 60 days or whatever, 45 days that derby is. And somebody that's listening to this that doesn't understand what's going on, I guess breaking this down a little bit, the Fall Brawl originally was a tournament that had just a few hundred people. Now it's got tens of thousands in it. It's basically a one fish, big fish derby. And I'll let you kind of take it from there. But, 40 some days long, weigh your one biggest fish. And
yeah, it runs over 6 weeks. You have to be entered before the start date. It's $35. The prizes this year will be divided up amongst the top 10. And we've added other prizes along the way. And there'll be some really unique proprietary stuff that comes out for the Slam this year that nobody's seen before. I think people will really enjoy it. You can weigh as many fish as you want through the period of 6 weeks. Your biggest fish always stays on the board. Pretty exciting time of year. Everybody's out there. This year, we're giving away a 238 with a 400 Mercury for first place. 15-horse kicker, Lawrence Electronics. Really cool boat. I mean, but let's face it, you're being handed, $100,000+. Pretty exciting. So it's pretty simple. We ask you to follow, state law. Obviously, you have to be in it. You have to have a fishing license. We do have a sportsman clause. You can't be out there mistreating each other or anything like that. But I think it's going to be just another great event. Something, and for guys that are coming from out of town, hopefully they enter both. I mean, what an opportunity to own a 622 and a 238 on a $35 price. Well, it would be $70 for both of them. Would be pretty darn exciting.
I mean, most realistically, some person is going to win two boats with approximately $250,000 value for one big fish, and you don't have to be Al Linder there's a little bit of luck that goes into this. Let's be honest.
Let me tell you, it's a lot of luck. The stories that I could tell you about our past winners, I mean, we've literally had people that have fished for an hour and a half and won. We've had one of the most touching weigh-ins I can remember, and this is a really unique situation, and it goes for a dad who didn't quite read the rules, but he was out with his son and he caught a big fish. They brought it into weigh, and everybody in the shop was freaking out because here's a young man, 7, 8 years old, had just weighed in the second biggest fish of the derby. Well, his dad had knelt down next to the kid to tell him, hey, if you win this $500, we're going to take half of it. We're going to put it in a college fund. The other half you can spend on you and your brother. And one of the guys was like, hey, man, you got to go tell him. And I'm like, okay. And I walk over to him and I said, sir, they're only put in the kids division if they don't win a prize in the adult division. Right now, he's not looking at winning 500. He's looking at winning 62,000. And he just broke down and started crying. His son couldn't understand it. He was happy. He got a free T-shirt and hat and really didn't quite grasp what was going on. It can literally happen to anybody at any time.
This wasn't Gary, was it?
Yes, it was. He didn't realize at first that they only won the kids prize if you weren't in the adult division. So just crazy to watch right there. And, the weigh-ins are when I get to know a lot of families. I get that real personal contact with people. And I don't think I'll ever forget that. It was just seeing, and of course he ultimately ended up in third place and won a big prize. It was 40-something thousand, but those are the things that make this special and make all the extra work, worth it. So you really never know who's going to win it. We all like to think we're big fish gurus and we're that guy, but some guy on the pier could make one cast and win this thing. And that's what makes it so exciting. You don't have to be a pro. You don't have to fish every day. Obviously, the more time you put into it, the better your chances. But the reality of it is, it's that one lure behind that one board or that one cast off of one of the local piers is going to win this thing. And that's really exciting.
And I think my take on this is, I've spent obviously as a full-time guide a lot of time on the water and running quite a few lines. And it's just a lot of people, I'm caught in a catch-22, and I'm sure you can relate to this. When we get, let's say, a 7.5 pound fish in the boat, guys start calling that 10 pounds. And I'm going to let another little cat out of the bag. It's probably not real
smart.
Wait,
a ton of those.
It's not real smart for me to say this, but again, you think about, forget the Derby for a second. As a guide, you get a guy, maybe he's from Wisconsin, Iowa, something. Their bodies of water have very few of those, if any, of that caliber fish, right? 7 pound fish is a nice fish. I mean, most cases out here right now, you're going to win. You're going to win tourneys, even on the Great Lake Erie. You're going to win derbies with a limit of those. Now, back, there was a period where that wasn't the case. But long story short, what do you do when you get a guy in there and he's calling that 10? And you don't want to crush his dreams, but I just, I usually tell him, like, maybe a little less than that. Because here's a guy who's just going nuts, right? But I've learned that I have to be very political with it, because you'll have a guy that then will take that fish afterwards to, I don't know, maybe it's a fish cleaning place or the grocery store, because he wants that official weight on that. And then they come back, they're fishing with me the next day and like, hey, do you know that fish weighed 7.3? I'm like, yeah, I told your buddy Bob. Bob looks over and is like, yeah, that's easy. That's what he told me. I said, well, you were really insistent that it was 10 pounds. And I said, well, I said, it probably not quite that much. And it's the same thing probably with the brawl, from the standpoint of obviously people weighing a lot of fish that you go, okay. Right? I mean,
but that's the unique thing about the brawl. And I'll tell you another story real quick. And fish means certain things to certain people. And this little story is what taught me you never know who's bringing the fish in and why they're bringing it in. A lot of people want to just have their picture taken. They want to show their families that they're out there fishing and they're having success, which is great. And that's a big part of the brawl or the slam. People want to be recognized to catch a fish. They put in the time and the effort. Well, and this was years back. I had a little old man and a little old lady, and they called. They wanted to know what time the weigh station was open to, and I told them and didn't think much of it. And right before close, a little old man, a little old woman come walking in the store, and they've got that normal little red cooler that somebody bought at Dollar General for $9.99, and they are so excited. And I recognize their voices from the phone call. They're like, we got it. And I'm like, awesome. I figured, little old man, little old woman, they're not gonna BS me. And I set the cooler down, I get the scale ready, and I open this cooler, and they're behind me, and I look down, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna shatter their dreams. This really sucks. And I'm like, but I gotta do it. So I reach in the cooler and I pull it out and I set it on the scale, and I'm like, it's 8 pounds, 2 ounces. And I hear from behind me this little old woman, never would expect it to come out of her mouth, a really explicit word, and yes. And I turn around and they are hugging each other and high-fiving. And the guy says to me, we've been fishing on this lake our whole lives, and that's the biggest walleye we ever caught. They were so happy. And 1 minute ago, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to break their dreams. And as it turned out, we made it.
Everything's perspective, man.
It doesn't matter who walks in the door with a fish. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes we're busy. It's a 2 pound walleye or it's a 4 pound walleye. But every fish means something to somebody a little bit different. And I try to, every time I get a little frustrated with it, I try to think back about that little old man and that little old woman, put a smile on my face and weigh that fish, even though I know it's not a winner. To them, it might be a winner. So
everything's perspective.
Yeah. But lesson learned right there on that moment. Every fish is special. So We weigh in a lot of fish. I know we're going to weigh in a lot of fish this year. We have a really unique thing going on with the live leaderboard this year. You may weigh in a 27 ranked fish, and you may win a kick butt prize. We've had sponsors step up and want to sponsor Fish 100. So it's not just this slam will not be just about catching the biggest fish. It'll also be about just catching fish for a lot of people and being rewarded for it.
That's super smart because, like in Wisconsin, I can't remember, I think it's called Battle on Bago. It's, I think, the biggest walleye tournament. They have like 10,000 people or something go out in one day. And first place, the biggest fish doesn't win the biggest prize. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I mean,
I've heard about this.
They pick a random number, and the reason is, and it's kind of a different deal, and maybe I think we're going to have to go to this elephant in the room too, but to curb the cheating. Because, anytime you get some ego and some money and some guys together in the room with fishing stuff, unfortunately, there's cheating. And so if you catch a 12-pounder, and that's the biggest fish in that Battle on Bago, whatever, that doesn't really, I think that's, don't quote me, but I think that's the name of it. That doesn't matter. Like, it may be fifth, they like do a drawing for like fifth place. So fifth, so you can't predict. You just got to go catch the best fish you can. And it lays out where it lays out. But a lot more people, that realize, hey, I'm not some pro or I'm not a full-time guide. Like, I'm just going out there to have fun, which I think is important. And I think that'll be good with the Walleye Slam, because I think people really lose their perspective. Unfortunately, again, not to be negative here, but realistically, I'll have people that pull up at me in the parking lot and be like, hey, I'm fishing the Brawl. And I'm sure they'll say it now too. I'm fishing the Walleye Slam. So I'm going to follow you around all day, dude, just so you know. Because I'm here. Or people that literally, I've had them cut me off to the point like, oh my God, we are going to literally impact each other. Like, just do a hard turn because they see I have a few fish on. And they're like, I'm fishing the Brawl, bro. I'm fishing the Brawl, man. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Well, first off, if I knew that following you would win me it, I'd have done it already. Number one. But I hear what you're saying, and I know where you're going with it. Unfortunately, I'd always use this rationale. If you go out in the public, you pick 10 people, you got 7 really good ones, you got one that you don't want to know, you got one that belongs in prison, and you got one we're not even going to talk about. In the walleye world, I'm choosing my words wisely here, but in the walleye world, it's no different. Unfortunately, many people have realized over the years we have caught a lot of cheaters, and it's why we will continue in the slam to lie detector the leaders. The random ones, obviously, we're not going to lie detector because it's completely random and we don't have to worry about how they ended up there. But we've seen it all. We've seen everything from loading fish to somebody else's fish to buying fish to stuffing fish to and I don't want to go into a lot, and a lot of these stories, you're familiar with the world. We actually found out some of the newer ways of cheating from other tournament circuits and things. And I don't really want to go into how they're doing it because I'd be educating people on how to do it. But cheating has gotten state of the art anymore. Guys are smart about it. Unfortunately, that's why we have to lie detector everybody. And
I don't want to be that guy, but I'm going to tell you something only to educate you. So really no ego in this one, but at least twice I've had what would have been the quote unquote winning fish, on a guide trip. Okay. So everyone that's out there, if you're entering, I don't care if it's the Fall Brawl, the Walleye Slam, everyone in the boat must be in the Derby, because I had a group where literally one of the guys sat there and everyone's high-fiving because we had fish in the teens, like scaled on the teens, and that's not going to guarantee a win, but chances are you're going to be up there pretty good. I mean, a real 13-pounder, there just isn't that many of them. Is that fair? I mean, that's
fair to say, absolutely.
So when you get one in the boat and you're down to a week or so less, I mean, again, crazy things can happen, but you're kind of like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good about this. And when everybody but one guy is high-fiving in your boat, I've learned that means that guy didn't sign up, because I've had it twice now. And the funny thing is I get guys, to talking about the change of this. 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, it wasn't the same deal. Now when you've got the money you have involved and then ultimately boats in the last few years, I have people calling me saying, hey, I know we've been fishing with you for 15 years, but you better be signed up for, the Fall Brawl. You better be signed up for, now I'm already hearing it with the Walleye Slam, because we're in it. Like, their whole group's like, hey, we're in, because they know the rules and they want to, partake in that. And, it's good for a lot of guide businesses as well, especially guys that, try to target bigger fish, like I try to do, many times in the season, and don't be left out.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing that I think that completely by accident, we'd all love to predict it. The Lake Erie fishery that we have, people traveling here to experience it at the rate they are now, I think is greater than it's ever been. You have an event going on that they can get involved in. It's really lined up that makes these things exciting and makes it worthwhile for people to enter. For a group of guys, it's common now. We've had already, I think we've got 12 different states represented in our signups for the Slam. If the border opens, I'm sure we're going to have Canadians join as well. This fishery is what's really made this happen. If the fishery wasn't great, let's face it, we wouldn't have the signups that we have, and we wouldn't have the prizes that we have. And a lot of people do question, why do we make sure everybody on the boat is in? Well, nobody would sign up if not just the captain, and then we wouldn't have any prize money. So it's not that we want to be mean about it. The reason that we have a date that you have to sign up by, and why you have to be signed up by the event, is just that reason, to generate big prizes and make this exciting for the people that were in it. If 1 out of 6 people signed up, there'd be 1/6 of the prize money. So everybody, unfortunately, on the boat does have to be in, and it's a great point you made, and I'm glad you made it. And I've seen it over the years so many times where 3 guys go out and they're convinced everybody on the boat's in it, and they catch that fish, and the number 3 guy has to break it to their buddies that he didn't spend that $35 to get in. And it's happened to you twice. It's happened to you twice. You wouldn't imagine how many times it's happened. So make sure you tell your friends, if you're coming here fishing, get in and don't pretend, because Mother Nature has karma.
It's happened even more than that, because in some other years, what would not have been a winning fish, but would have been a pay fish of some type, because these guys, they follow this stuff like the stock market, man. I get guys in my boat and they're like, hey, 11-2's leading, just so you know, Captain here, Captain. But it's okay, because if you get a 10.75, we're still in the money right now. So just so you know, here's where we're at. And so these guys are following it, but I've had multiple times where we've had fish that, was up there, or at least would have done something for them. And again, one guy didn't get it. I've got 2 guys in particular that are literally, I don't know if I'd say ended friendships, but severely strained or much different, because a guy, like one good example is I had a father and son that fished with me quite a bit. The son didn't sign up. The dad was livid. It's a funny story. Livid with the son. He's like, $30, I'm paying for this fishing trip. And when I say son, he was a college-age kid. And so at any rate, so the dad brings one of his other fishing buddies. That's one of those times we had a giant on, or, in the boat. And the other guy's like quiet. And he looks at them. He's like, hey, Bob, yeah, I didn't sign up. I never thought we'd catch a big one. He's like, I didn't get it in time, but I just wanted to go on the free trip with you.
Wow.
Those guys like severely strained relationship, I can tell you that.
I imagine.
Because he's like, dude, my son didn't go on this because of, he's like, I'm not going on this trip just, but if we're going to go, we might as well spend an extra $30 and, I don't know.
Well, the prize money anymore, and not that it's an excuse, and not that I would ever like to think that, something like this would strain a friendship, but let's face it, the prize money, even for a 5th place or an 8th place or a 4th place or a 3rd place, is, you're not going to retire, but it's change your life money. Really is going to help with the kids' tuition. It might help getting the daughter her first car. It might help do some of those repairs or upgrade the electronics on your boat you always wanted to do, but really chose your family first and couldn't do. The money's gotten real. And unfortunately, sometimes that makes people act in ways they shouldn't. But the reality
That's
of
the
it is,
nicest thing I've ever heard before. You should be a politician with that phrasing.
but in all reality, there's only so many winners, and there's thousands of people that have a good time doing this. So, you know, you got to keep it in perspective. And, you know, let's face it, 4 guys going out on a trip with Ross Robertson is a lot of fun. But even catching a fish, let's say that's 3 ounces out of the money, is a memory that they're going to have for, you know, they almost, and they're going to brag about that for the rest.
It probably brings them back more than if they did.
Right. And then, well, that's right. Because fishing, a lot of it is ego driven. There are guys that sign up because they're convinced every year they're winning and they're going to redeem themselves from the year before.
Fishing is really ego driven. I'll tell you that. Fishing with Ross.
I was waiting for producer dude. You went like 53 minutes without busting my chops.
And he said that fishing with Ross was fun. So
not if you're producer. Not if you're producer, dude. He's a whooping boy. Oh,
but it's really cool, and you know, for a lot of people, when we started this, just like why people fish it, we started for a lot of reasons. Listen, at the end of these things, I've had other bait stores send me fruit baskets. This really does benefit the communities here along the lakeshore. The tackle shops that used to close stay open now for the duration of the slam or the brawl. It's changed their business. It's given them a reason to be open. The motel rooms got people in it. The Airbnbs got people in it. And it's been going on so long. It's funny. Guys will come to town just for these events, and they walk in the store like it was just yesterday they were here, and they're like, "Hey, Craig, we're back." They come here just for this, and it's really good for, you know, we could go down the list of bait stores. We go down the list of businesses. You know, the local gas stations, the restaurants. This became a really big deal for a lot of these small communities around the lake, and you live in one, you participate in one, or, you know, you live around them. To have an extra 10,000 people come into Huron in the fall, to come into Lorraine in the fall, to come to my little town, to Sheffield Lake in the fall, it means a lot. The people that live in the communities that may not even fish look forward to these because they know there's going to be an increase of business. A lot of guys look forward to it because they know the professionals are coming to town for this, and they'll get their opportunity to say hi to Mike Hansen or say hi to Max Wilson. This has really started to benefit a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And the fun and all those benefits really outweigh the shenanigans that we've had over the years. So I'm really looking forward to putting on another event. And I have no reason to believe it's not going to be the biggest one there is in the next 5 years. So pretty exciting.
We could talk about walleye tournaments and tackle all day long. Unfortunately, I got to let you get back to selling the stuff. But leave us with one tip, maybe, that you think could give somebody, whether it's understanding a rule or the fishing end of it, so that if, you know, there's thousands of people that are going to get in both these derbies, that you, as the guy that's weighed every fish up until this point, feel like, hey, people should know this.
Well, we've touched base on a few things. First of all, make sure you and all your friends are signed up. Second of all, one of the things that I see that would be a tip-wise, and I see it every year, care of the fish once you get it. If you really get a fish that you believe is on that board anywhere, or you just want to show off a good looking fish to your family in front of our Walleye Slam board, get that fish buried in ice as soon as possible. Get the ice up in the gills, shut that fish's defense mechanism down right away. People put live wells in boats to keep fish alive. They don't necessarily put live wells in boats to keep them the heaviest possible. As you know this, when you drain your live well, it's amongst any other people, or you throw a fish in a cooler full of water and that fish is still alive, Once you take the fish out and you drain that last 3 inches of water is full of slime. That's that fish trying to protect itself. It's excreting it through its skin as a defense mechanism. You get that fish under ice and you shut that down, that stays in the fish. Liquid is weight. Weight is how you win. So to stick it in a live well, drive around for 6 hours, you are losing weight every minute it goes by. To put it in a cooler full of water while it's alive, you are losing weight every hour that goes by. My recommendation, especially on a boat, even if you don't do it with all your fish, but you get that one winning fish, have a bag of ice in a cooler there, roll that fish upside down, fill its gills with ice, shut that fish's defense mechanism down so it keeps all the weight in that fish. When you get to the shop, we're of course going to clean the ice out of it. We're going to make sure it's prepared for the scale and we're going to put it on. But caring for that fish is really important because let's face it, 1 ounce, 2 ounce could be a $50,000 decision. So for the cost of a bag of ice, what's a bag of ice? $1.50 for 50 grand. I'll carry one on my boat every single night that I'm fishing the Walleye Salm. So that's my tip.
I like that tip. Now, here's one question off of this that I was actually thinking about in the last few years. So let's say I have that fish. Is it legal for me to zip tie its mouth shut and then cut that when I take it to weigh in it?
It is, but what most people don't realize is we clean the mouths out. So if your fish spits up a shad or a perch, you can't just stick it back in the mouth. We're going to pull it out of its mouth. If you're keeping it alive, it's not really caring for the fish anyway. It's going to throw up and it's going to blow it out its gills or it's going to be lodged in the mouth. So it is legal, but not really the way you want to take care of that fish. Like I said, the only reason you'd be zip tying it is because you're putting it in a live well and you don't want it to spit up. My suggestion is shut that fish down right away and it won't spit up. We don't throw up when we're dead. If that makes sense.
There's your tip. That tip right there could win somebody a new boat or two.
Yes, sir, it could.
Well, Craig, I want to thank you for giving us a bunch of your time because I know it's very valuable. You got to get back to that shop and man it up there. But thanks, everybody, for tuning into the Bigwater Podcast. Hey. This and more. Producer dude, what are we at? Bigwaterfishing.com. I should know my own website, right?
Bigwaterfishing.com, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify.
And Instagram and YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. Bigwater Fishing. Again, Craig, thank you very much for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Folks, we are out. We are going to go prep for catching the Walleye Salm winner.